Hello and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, I'm Tom Dillon, and with me today is Jo Watkins. Dr Jo Watkins. Good morning, Jo.
Good morning, Tom. Well, this is a pleasure. It's very exciting.
Yeah, how are you this morning?
Very good, thank you. Very well.
Good. Excellent stuff. So just as a bit of an introduction, because people won't have met Joey before, I always call you Joey. Kind of like when you were on the course, you were Joey. And now everywhere I see you, you're Jo. Which
Well, do you know what? I'm normally Jo, a Joey to kind of friends and family. But on the course, there were two Joes. Do you remember? So it was very...
Yeah. Okay.
So I answer Jo, Joey, anything really.
Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about Jo. So Jo's a portfolio GP, adventure-loving mum of four, and co-founder of an organization supporting teenage girls called The How People, and is now a mentor and coach to other medics and healthcare professionals who are starting their own businesses. And very recently, Jo has started her own podcast. And I think you're up to episode 12 now, Jo?
Yeah,
yes,
episode
fantastic.
12.
Welcome to the podcast community. Excellent
Thank you
stuff.
very much.
And you're using Pete, our podcast man.
Yeah, Pete. I call him Patient Pete, the podcast man.
Yeah, he's very patient. Although he does fall about laughing when he's recording hours. So, so Jo, we normally start talking about how you got into coaching, but I'd be quite interested to hear, because you've got a quite unconventional kind of route through medicine. So tell us a little bit about your medical career.
Oh, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Tom, for having me. Yeah, I guess I have had a bit of an unconventional medical career, but I guess it all started quite conventionally. I was brought up in a family. My dad was a obs and gynae consultant. My mum was a nurse. I knew no different really growing up. I was really into sport, and I was kind of into the human body, and I wasn't really sure how those two things were going to match for somebody that was really quite average at school. I didn't really see myself as capable of doing medicine. That was for the brighter children among the group. But my dad was very encouraging, and he said, look, if you're going to do something along those lines, then why don't you give it a go? You've got nothing to lose. So I confidently went into school one day and told my chemistry teacher that I was going to do medicine. At which point he literally kind of buckled on the floor laughing so hard. And he kind of looked at me point blank in the eyes, and he was like, you will never be a scientist. And at that point, I remember vividly just thinking, firstly, like, how dare you tell me that I can't do something? And secondly, I'm going to go out there and prove you totally wrong. So my medical career started with trying to prove a point to somebody who didn't believe I could do it, which I think is quite interesting given what I've carried on to do. Anyway, long story short, I didn't get the A levels that I needed. He handed me my A level results, giving me even more fuel to the fire to go and retake them to prove him wrong. So it was definitely a fight to get in. But do you know what? The journey through medical school, I absolutely loved. I made some incredible friends. I felt very fortunate and privileged to be there. The learning was incredible. And I am a bit of an avid learner, I've realized as I've got older. But the path is then set for you, right? You suddenly come off this conveyor belt. I jumped off it as soon as I could. I did my house jobs with loads of friends up in Liverpool. Then I went off to Australia for a couple of years. And coming back from Australia, really didn't know what I wanted to do, because I kind of already felt a little bit like I was a round peg in a square hole. I wasn't quite sure. And what then happened were 3 or 4 years of sort of doing 6 months here, 6 months there, quite a lot of travel, because I was single then, and I was moving around the country, staying, like I'll get a job in Nottingham, I'll get a job in Shrewsbury, because these are where my friends were. And over the course of the 2 or 3 years of sort of bouncing about, I became settled up in Nottingham, and I decided I wanted to do pediatrics, because that's what was jumping out at me. And I didn't realize that underneath this all was this just absolute sort of inner drive and passion to work for myself, to be my own boss, but it was sort of packaged up in a medic, and it was quite confusing, really. So I did lots of moving around, focused then on getting my GP training, because I'd done all of these different jobs. and I qualified as a GP. And then the kind of opening started. It was like, right, what am I going to do with this now? And I did some acupuncture. I then trained to do Botox because that's what everyone seemed to be doing that was doing something outside of medicine. But I was always looking for what I could do next. And then I think I turned 30, 31, 32, and the biological clock kicked in. And my husband, who I'd met up in Nottingham, we decided to move down to South Wales, which was a lifestyle move, having had a period of travel again, because we wanted to have a family and bring up kids by the sea and be as outdoorsy as we could within the UK. So we moved down to South Wales, and then I really felt like I was doing things that I should do as opposed to things that I really wanted to do. I was lucky enough to get a locum job in a partnership, in a practice that was just fantastic, like the most incredible partners who were my friends, again, community, wonderful, wonderful people. I absolutely loved working with them. And they offered me a part-time partnership when I was pregnant with my first child. And I realized that that's what I was supposed to want, 2-day-a-week partnership, amazing team, amazing people. And I took it because I thought I should. I don't regret it one bit because they were incredible. But when I drove back to work after maternity leave from number 2, that journey to work, I knew on that journey that this isn't what I was going to do for the rest of my life, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So at that point, I was in this traditional role. I was a GP trainer. I was a partner. I was trying to revamp the website in the partnership and get involved with the how to sort of ramp up the training schemes and that sort of thing. You know, I was really trying to embrace all areas of the job that I should be doing. But part of me knew that there was something else. And it was finding that something else that was a real challenge for me. So I guess up to this point, I hadn't found the something else. But now over the last 15 years, that something else has evolved, I guess.
I said it was unconventional.
It's very unconventional. Yeah. So at that point, I was doing all the training and doing the GP work. And we went on a holiday to Canada. We spend a lot of time in Canada. We've got relatives over there. And we were eating my cousin's granola, which is amazing, out of this world. I'd had it before and I'd never really taken much notice. So I came back to the UK and I was looking in the shops for something like her granola. And I basically, everything I picked up was absolutely disgusting. And we tried various things. I was like, I'm going to have to start making this stuff because this, I'm really missing it. So I started making it. And my husband, who tends to have these little ideas and then he parts them to me and then I go and do ridiculous things. He said, oh, you could sell this. So off we went on a kind of 3-year journey into business, having absolutely no idea what I was doing at all, what I was creating. But I loved the process of starting up. So, starting up an idea from nothing, building a brand, creating a product, marketing it, selling it. And it grew and grew and grew, and it properly snowballed. But I made every mistake in the book, wore all of the hats for far too long, didn't understand the concept of outsourcing, bringing people in to support you, not doing everything. So basically our kitchen turned into an industrial unit. And at this point, I was like 2 kids and a dog and pregnant. The kitchen turned into an industrial unit. It was carnage retrospectively. But it was exciting, brilliant carnage, but it was a learning curve like no other. But it reached a point where it just became really incompatible with life. So we mothballed it and went about the day job again. At that point, I'd left my partnership, but I was working regularly in the minor injury unit. So I carried on with my 2 days a week, picking up the kids from school, cycling to work, on the outside, again, living the dream. Couldn't fault it, combining work and life and, enjoying it, but also just feeling there was something missing again. So we then decided to take a year off and travel again. That was Dave suggesting that we should do a couple of ski seasons. And then it turned into a full year of travel with 4 kids, which was just the most incredible experience of my life. And that opened all sorts of doors in my head. So one of them was educationally. We started homeschooling the 2 boys, and our second boy didn't go to school until he was 10. So the whole world of education shifted for us. And the whole, what I found was that I went on this sort of slightly personal journey of growth that I now realize was a lot of self-coaching. I didn't really know what coaching was at this point. And I wish retrospectively that I had had a coach at that point. If I'd invested in a coach, if I'd had some sort of supportive ear, I might have come to the right conclusion sooner. Because what actually happened then is because I didn't highlight to myself or anyone else that I was a bit nervous about running a business on my own. I wanted to run a business with somebody else. So I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted to grow a team and run a business in a community with other people. And I wrote myself sort of a long wish list of things in 5 years' time. And running a business on my own terms, being able to travel and working with people I love were the things that I really wanted to do. So I approached my amazing friend, Polly, who is 10 years younger than me. We go back a long way. There's lots of stories of how we've kind of interlinked, but she's just brilliant. And I knew that she would be the right person to run this business with me. And she very patiently agreed to give it a go, despite not having running a business on her wish list at the time. And we entered into this world of the how people together, and it's been, again, the most incredible learning curve. And the interesting thing about this is that it started off as an in-person, basically like an after-school club, like a cool version of Guides or Brownies, 16 girls, communication skills, fire building, surfing, teamwork, journaling, gratitude, confidence building. I mean, it was exactly what you want your 10-year-old girl to be doing after school. It was amazing. And I say that with a 9-year-old girl now. I just wish it still existed in that form for her. But obviously COVID then came along, and it was like, well, actually, it's like putting a gun to your head and being like, well, you've just got to crack on with it.
Yeah.
So within about a week of closing and cancelling all our sessions, we had gone online and asked speakers to come as speakers to some sessions in the daytime with the girls, and we run it for charity. So we earned about £1,800 for NHS charities. We sent loads of gift boxes to hospitals, and we had the most incredible, I think it was about 9 sessions with speakers, sort of 10 minutes, like TED Talks, really, for teens, 10-minute talks from inspirational role models. We had Olympians and artists and all sorts of people. And then at the end of that, it was like, right, what's next? What's next? And we had our own business coach at that time that we'd connected with. And we were thinking about writing a course. And I said, look, this is a membership. This is a community. Like, girls need a community right now. We have a problem, which is COVID, and we have a solution, which is bringing them all into a Zoom room and being a supportive mentoring, coaching space, loosely. Again, I didn't really realize what coaching was at this point. A safe space for teenage girls between 10 and 16 to come every Thursday at 8 o'clock and be together and be inspired by each other. Now, what I also know now is that as a business model would fail miserably if I tried to do that now, because girls between 10 and 16 being on Zoom at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night does not work in the real world. Again, it was the product market fit at the time that made that magical. And so that's what we did. And that lasted for the whole of COVID, and was incredible. Post-COVID, there was a shift, and we had to morph and think and pivot and twist and turn. And then we got an email out of the blue, from the Prince's Trust. And a couple of meetings later, lots of discussions, lots of emails, we actually co-created a course that we wrote with, and we had a workbook and we had video tutorials, but one of the members of the Prince's Trust takes it into the school and delivers it in person using the workbooks and the videos. So you've got that fusion of online world and real life. And that's still running now in a couple of schools and has been running over the last year. So the how people has changed and is now not what it was. along the way, I was being approached by medics saying, how do you do this? How do you take a business online? How do you run a group program? How do you run a membership? Can you tell me how to start a brand? What made you do this? And how can you? And I kept getting emails, and I got one email out of the blue in January 2022 from Neris Freighter saying, will you coach me? And mentor me. And I was like, well, I could, but I'm not a coach or a mentor. And she was like, well, you've kind of done this stuff, and I just want you to share your expertise with me. So that's what we did. And I used my first money that she paid me. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? I know I need to invest in myself. And I don't feel like I can call myself a coach without being a coach. And that's when I went on my own journey to try and find some sort of qualification, because I'm just as bad as any other medic. I love a qualification. And I found you through various people. And I started with you, I think it was June 2022. So I was already coaching and mentoring two people when I came to you. And then I did the 6-month program with you, which we can talk about. And at the end of that, I felt empowered. I felt like massively educated, and I felt quite enlightened personally through stuff that we talked about on the program, to then go out there and make this happen. And it's really been, the last couple of years have been incredible, because I've had that confidence that actually I've got a lot of experience here, and it's a very unique perspective to be a medic and to be a small business owner, to have failed and tried and done. And that learning, I've packaged together into a group program, which has supported nearly 33 medics and healthcare professionals over the last year. And I'm now doing more one-to-one stuff as well, because we're in the country this year. But we kind of balance 3 months travel, 9 months here, working online. I still work as a GP on a Wednesday. So yes, it is in not very summarized summary, a windy career.
To be honest, I didn't expect it to be succinct, Joey.
You know me, Tom.
That's absolutely fine. And so one of my questions was going to be, how did you come to coaching? But we've done that one, so that's all right.
But I came to coaching through several people telling me that I should do coaching. And it's funny how you know, if you listen to those moments. I remember my sister-in-law she works for the British Council abroad, and she's had a life coach for about 20 years. And she was talking about the value of it. And another friend that I've known for 20 years, he was saying, essentially, in general practice, we're life coaches without the time. So a couple of people had mentioned it, but I was very keen for this to be quite, I wanted that medical container is really important, because as you will have experienced with all the medics that you've dealt with, we have been on this conveyor belt. We've had creativity removed from us at a very, very young age. We have to tick boxes. We have to have qualifications. We have to turn up and be seen in a certain way. There's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen for medics, I think. And I'm sure that's happened for you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is a big part about teaching and I always say, I don't want you to unlearn what you do, because what you do is really important. And within the context you're working in, those skills are really useful. But actually stepping out of that and coming to coaching and working in a different field, then, being able to allow for time. Because that's quite often a big problem for the coaches or the medics coming to our coaching, is that it's just bang, bang, bang. Like, what's the next question? Move on. Let's get it done.
Yes.
And actually, we want time to exist within our coaching space, time for people to think about what's really important to them. So I fully, and so much of what you said kind of resonates with us in our journey, because we were live before COVID and then took everything online. And there's something about that willingness to be vulnerable and just go out there and do something. And so we very quickly during COVID, we were back online doing something and doing some stuff for free. So we set up coaching groups for coaches to say, look, come, there's a community here to support you. So we did a lot of free stuff, but from that, develop what we're doing, and we got better at what we do online. So yeah, and we're still online. So So we're
Well,
not
this
gone
is
back live, but
no,
it's
and this is it, isn't it? It's just opened so many do you know, those obviously it was horrendous. My husband's was in intensive care, obviously knowing lots of medics, it was a horrendous time.
mm,
But I think it certainly, I'm not sure this would have all happened so
no,
quickly without it. You know, I
yeah,
think there would have been a lot of messing about. But I think, you know, we talk about having that sort of slightly experimental mindset, which
mm,
again doesn't really go with medical stuff. We
no,
don't tend to wing it and have a go in medicine for
no,
obvious reasons.
mm,
So it's uncomfortable, but once you start doing it, I think it's something that's actually always come very naturally to me
yeah,
because I think
yeah,
essentially, you know, I am probably a medic with an entrepreneurial
mm,
mindset as
yeah,
opposed to a medic that's trying to learn that.
yes, yeah.
So I
And I
think
think
it's,
that some of that is personality, isn't it? So some
yeah,
people will suit the structure of being a medic
yeah.
and embrace the structure and not really want to venture outside of it. But there are a whole swathe of medics that, and actually, in terms of certainly as being a GP, you've got that opportunity to have a portfolio career where you can do GPing 2 days a week and then go off and do something completely different. And obviously, there's much less risk attached to that than just giving up your role completely and
Oh,
going out there trying.
absolutely. And that's the first thing that I say to anybody that comes to me for business advice or you know, wanting some mentoring and coaching, you know, don't give up the day job because
Yeah.
I think however hard medicine is and whatever aspect of medicine you're in, you're getting paid, let's face it, a good wage to go
Hmm.
there and do a really important, amazing job. You know, the healthcare model of private and NHS, it's a bit like the education system. It's not really moving with the
No.
times.
Yeah.
I've just done a podcast recording with Sui Wong, Dr. Sui Wong, who's a
Mm.
neuro-ophthalmologist in Moorfields in London. You know, she's the top of her game, like quaternary referral center. Like if you want to see her previously, you have to either live near her or pay to see her on a Friday in a private hospital. And she was
Yeah.
just saying how when she works privately, she has nothing to do with the money. So it's almost like there is no money transferred.
Mm.
Now, if you've got intractable migraines and you're on 3 lots of medication and you live in America and you want the best of the best, you can go on her group program, you can buy her books, you can listen to her work, you can communicate with her through the medium of the World Wide Web. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have this world and these things at our fingertips. So why
Yeah.
aren't we embracing medics doing
Mm.
amazing things? And
Yeah.
I know you are and I am, but why
Definitely.
aren't we all?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So, Joe, you've obviously spent 6 months learning how to coach and you have some thoughts on it. What's your favorite coaching tool that you learned whilst you were coaching?
Well, I remember vividly where I was when you used the metaphor coaching. Um, I don't know what the actual model's called that's the metaphor, but I remember you using metaphors. And at the time, we were
Mm.
like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
And I remember exactly where I was sitting, and you were coaching me. And I started talking about a mountain bike wheel. And I wasn't really sure where it was going at the time. And I was a little bit kind of like, well, how can this possibly be a thing? And in true Tom fashion, by the end of 20 minutes, you know, this whole mountain bike had been assembled outside this wooden door and it symbolized this and that and the other. I think I was probably crying. That tended to happen quite a lot. And it was just so powerful. So I love that. For me personally, receiving coaching, that was my highlight. The one that I use the most, and it's, you know, it's probably one that a lot of us use, is a version of the magic wand. But
Mm.
when people come to me, generally they may have lots of different ideas. So I kind of say, you know, if there was no judgment, you know, there was no risk, there was no chance of failure, all of these ideas were going to work. You know, which one of these would you choose? And I think
Mm.
that's a kind of Joey version of the magic wand, or it
Yeah.
might be called something else. So the magic wand is definitely a way of transporting people to that place so that we actually know that we're on the right track. Because I
Mm.
think if somebody had used that magic wand with me when I was before I went into business, but certainly during the granola business. And I remember somebody doing the opposite of a magic wand, which was somebody, you know, quite high up in business that I came across once said to me, well, nobody ever made any money out of making the product themselves. And if he'd said to me, if I had a magic wand, and if he'd said that to me, I wouldn't have said, well, what I'm really hoping is to be running a factory with 16 people
Yeah.
in hairnets, making granola and selling it all over the country in Tesco's. That would never have been my
No,
answer.
no, no. I know it's a
So
good,
I think that's a really powerful question.
yeah. No, it's a great tool, and for all sorts of walks of life. I use it in a very practical way with I was with a medical director last week, and I've been working with him for a year, but he's looking at where he wants to be by the end of his term. So he's got a 5-year term. He's now a year in, and I'm saying, so let's fast forward. Let's imagine a magic wand is waved. You're coming to the end of your time. How would you want it to be? And so he was able to go, and he's a very good coachee. He goes
Yeah.
there, he does it,
Yeah.
he imagines that time, and it's very rewarding, very insightful for him. But yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. And
mm,
it's something that we don't allow ourselves to do. I think, we have these sort of lofty aspirations, maybe as junior doctors. But I think particularly when you find yourself on a path that maybe this whole should thing, you
mm,
know, that you should be on. And then you find yourself looking down the barrel of, oh my God, am I going to do this for the next 30 years?
yeah,
And you're maybe surrounded by potentially people that are just kind of putting up with that. I had partners that had like retirement clocks and, then I can do this and then I could do that. I remember, there doesn't seem to be much control. And
mm,
I try and encourage people that actually we can forge our own path and make decisions that take us towards, just that step closer to where we
yeah,
want to be.
yeah,
Even if it's not the kind of the ultimate end point, it's nearer than it was.
yeah. And I've used that magic wand question in terms of working with GPs. And like I've done group presentations where I've said, okay, let's imagine Monday morning, everything is as you want it to be. Magic wand has been waved. And people push back and they go, well, it can't be, can it? I'm not going to get everything. But actually, if you can imagine it, and maybe there's one thing you can change that will make life better.
Mm.
So it's just taking the blinkers off, isn't it? And just let's just free flow in this.
Yeah.
Yes, lovely stuff. So you've talked a little bit about how you use coaching in your work, and we've said that you use coaching and mentoring. So there's a bit of imparting your wisdom and experience in there as well. So how do you think your approach has changed through doing your coaching learning?
I I am naturally, I think, a problem solver
Mm,
and much more of a mentor and almost like I think without any coaching qualifications, I would have to be more of a consultancy based thing. I
mm,
come in, like troubleshoot, tell people what they need to be doing, and that's my kind of go-to. And my children will say, you don't need to fix things all the time, mum. That's my kind of go-to thing. So what it's given me is a massive toolkit and permission to not fix, and the importance of listening, really listening, and allowing people to come to their own conclusions rather than finishing people's sentences and
mm.
putting words in people's mouths. Now, I say this with a little bit of irony, given that I sometimes find that really difficult with the people nearest and dearest to me. I
Yeah.
have 4 children, 2 teenagers, a busy life, and I forget sometimes day to day um, to do that. And I think that's what I loved the most about that 6 months of working with you and the incredible people in the group is that it felt like sort of personal therapy, and so much is unearthed in those coaching sessions. And that's what I learnt from you, that I did not appreciate the value of silence
Mm,
and the fact that you don't have to impart anything. It's almost like it doesn't really matter what wealth of experience you've got, what letters you've got after your name. What matters is how that person feels in that space at the moment and how encouraging and open you are to them sharing
mm.
and listening to them.
Yeah, it's very powerful, just being listened to. And it always says when people come to the course and then we do our introductory thing and say, look, these are the main skills you're going to use. You're going to use active listening, good open questions, playing back, and you're going to provide lots of space. And people go, well, it can't be that simple. Because it sounds simple just to be able to do that. But actually, it's really difficult to get to that place of leaving the space. And yeah. And that's one of the great joys for us is watching people at the beginning. I say a lot of people come from that background of just 10-minute consultations and just rattling through questions,
Yeah.
getting as short, sharp answers as you can, and
Yeah.
just getting it over with. And actually, by the end of the course, the coaching sessions that they have, there's so much space in the sessions. It's lovely to see. So
Oh,
yeah.
it's amazing. And it's everything that we would all wish that we had in our GP consultation time. You know, if we had this training and this amount of time, then, you know, that would make such a massive difference. I think as GPs, we go through this as junior doctors and in the hospital training. Suddenly you go into general practice and you learn this concept of ideas, concerns, and expectations, which you will have heard GPs
Yeah.
talking about. And you suddenly think, oh, I've totally nailed this. Like, you know, active listening, I don't need you to tell me about that. I do it all the time. I always know what's wrong with the patient when they leave the room. And I think we think that by knowing ideas, concerns, and expectations, that we've somehow, you know, we've ticked that box and we are active listeners and we are able to elicit this information. But coaching's a whole nother level.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was citing some research the other day from a GP who had done research about GPs and how long they take before they interrupt. And he was saying it's about 38 seconds in the UK for a GP to before they actually interrupt. Whereas within a coaching session, we probably want 38 seconds of silence at times. You know, that's well, no one's saying anything. So yeah, good. Right, let's rattle on because we're coming to the end. Conscious of time, and you have to be somewhere. What outside of you, we've kind of done your professional roles, but
Yeah.
outside of your professional roles, what hobbies, interests do you have in your personal life?
Well, we do a lot of travel. So as we have 4 kids, as I've mentioned, 2 teens and 2 younger ones, and we have 3 months every year. Dave's annualized his hours. So we tend to head off to Canada at least every other year where we have family. We're massive skiers, all of us. We have a huge family over there that we just love spending time with. So anything outside, for me, up a mountain, but we live by the coast in the UK, down in South Wales.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time in the sea. I don't surf, but the kids do. But I now have a new hobby, Tom, that I'm going to out on this podcast. So we went to a retreat recently where I was taught how to Nordic walk.
Oh yes, with the sticks.
With the sticks, and it's not walking with poles, it's Nordic walking, which is an actual thing. So I'm like a closet Nordic walker. I've got my poles and I've got my trainers, and I do it in the dark when the kids are at their clubs. So they basically have 3 nights a week where I'm sort of relatively free between sort of 6 and 7. And I have to confess, I normally spend it either on the phone, sending voice notes, working in the car, catching up on things. But for the last month, I've spent it Nordic walking, which is brilliant for
Well
me.
done.
It's high energy. I look ridiculous, but I don't care. But I can't use my phone because my hands are
Yeah, of
strapped to
course.
poles.
Excellent.
And it's very rhythmical and very mindful. And I don't have any podcast or music on. And it's absolutely amazing. I love
Yeah.
it. So I've now decided I'm going to enter some sort of Nordic walking championships. But I've yet to do it in the day walking down the street.
It's
But
got to be done.
I will be. I'll be there.
Yeah. Be brave. Get out
That's
there.
my new hobby. Yeah, I will do. Daytime Nordic walking to be coming.
Yeah. Wonderful. So finally, Joe, what would you like to say to any doctors who are thinking of adding coaching to their professional life?
I would tell them not to hesitate, and I do regularly tell them not to hesitate, and I would send them straight to you because of this unifying factor of learning with other medics who understand the same blocks that you have, who have the same training, not to mention you and Helen are absolutely amazing. But I wouldn't hesitate, but I would go into it with an open mind as to what is your end goal going to be. The actual learning is a complete joy, but also be mindful of the process for yourself. I think it's probably the first time for a lot of medics where we've given ourselves and allowed ourselves the time So go into it with an open mind, don't hesitate, and reach out to Tom if you want to talk to somebody about it. Any number of us that have been through coaching would happily talk to you if you're not sure.
Lovely. Thank you, Joey. Thank you so much. I knew we'd overrun. I don't know how you ever did GP consultations in 10
Can you
minutes.
imagine? That's why I wasn't very good at it.
I'm sure you were brilliant at it, just overrunning slightly. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm sure our listeners will be delighted to hear from you. Next time on the podcast, we will be looking at a challenging coaching, and we will be looking at unconscious bias. So we look forward to discussing that with you next time. So for now, we'll say goodbye. Bye-bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.